Hey, welcome everyone that's joining in. We're going to give it a few minutes to get started. Yeah, for those of you wondering why this setup's kind of weird, two things. When I give my intro, I'll kind of tell you guys a little bit more. Uh, right now, I'm living out of an Airstream, so I'm sitting in my truck taking this call. And number two is I'm on an iPad Pro, so due to Apple's hardware design, the camera's not optimal in landscape. And also, I never use Zoom, so please bear with me if I don't know any of the user experience for this product. Okay, we're gonna get started at 5:05. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Just maybe confirm in the chat, just to make sure the audio is okay. Cool, thanks Tommy, thanks Clarissa. Okay, so it looks like we have actually a pretty small audience. So this could probably be a pretty interactive session. Someone has their hand raised. Feel free to come off mute. Catherine, real quick, can the attendees come off mute, or is there some type of security control on that?
No, they can't unmute, but they can put in the chat or the Q&A.
Okay, sounds good. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and maybe if you raise your hand, that will just like let me know that there's something in the chat. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do a slide deck today, but I really don't want to spend a ton of time on the slides. Like I will send them out afterwards because I think they're super valuable and will help you guys out a lot in your, like kind of problem solving abilities and the way you think about approaching solving problems. So I'll share out those slides and whatever format Hack PSU provides for sharing documentation. But I want to then kind of learn about what you guys are actually working on this weekend and see how we can kind of take some of the learnings that I provide in this session to maybe some of the problems you guys are solving over this weekend during Hack PSU. So like I said, it's a small audience, so I think we can have a pretty interactive session. If you have any questions during the presentation, no need to wait. We can stop the presentation. I can take them throughout the discussion. So with that said, let me go ahead and share out my screen. I plan to turn off my video during the presentation just due to bandwidth. So I'm going to turn off my video. Okay, I'm just trying to get this screen share up and running, so give me a moment. Okay, it looks like I'm having a little bit of issue sharing out my screen here. Just give me another moment.
I just changed some permissions for you, so you should be able to share now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I'm not seeing the option to actually share my screen. I'm still not seeing that. I'm going to join back in and see if that helps.
Sorry for the delay, guys. We'll get started in 1 minute. Shawn, are you able to share now?
Yeah, I'm still not seeing the option. I'm only seeing the option to share through like specific apps. I don't see anywhere to share like the actual desktop. That's usually within the share content.
I don't know if that is available during webinars. I think that's a feature that have to have been set a while before, so you might just have to bounce around.
Okay, give me a sec. Then I need to put it into one of these apps because it's actually living on my files. So one sec. Okay, can you guys see that share? I have to share a PDF because it's not letting me share out an actual PowerPoint. You guys can see it?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Also, this is the wrong draft, so any spelling mistakes, apologize in advance. Okay, so real quick, this is the agenda for this discussion. So I'm going to do a quick introduction of who I am. I want to talk about why becoming a natural problem solver is important and how to start doing that. I want to give you guys kind of a framework to go tackle problems from a human-centric lens. And I want to give you guys basically like this one-page cheat sheet that you guys can leave this discussion with today, take and apply to any problems you plan to solve going forward. And then lastly, as mentioned earlier in the session, I would love to hear what you guys are working on this weekend and see, if I can help, with any of my experience, give you guys any tips or tricks, or if you guys can take any of the learnings from today and apply those to what you're working on this weekend. So first off, let me do a quick intro of myself. Some of you may have met me before. I see some familiar faces in the chat. If not, I'm Shawn Thompson. I was a Penn State IST student back in 2016. That's when I graduated. When I graduated Penn State, I was working on a startup called Descomp. And what that startup focused on is allowing design students to build out their portfolio by working directly with nonprofits to solve their design challenge problems. And basically then after they had built a portfolio, we'd help kind of source their portfolios to potential employers. So I've always kind of had a passion about helping college students find a fit from college to industry, because that was a hard transition for myself and a lot of my other friends. So I think it just kind of resonated with me. Today, what I do today is I'm a product manager at Microsoft. I focus on a product called Azure Percept. You guys can go look at it, but basically what that product is what we are helping do is bring a platform for companies to bring AI to the edge. As you see, there's the cloud, you see, traditional data centers. There's a lot of interesting use cases for processing data at the edge and then sending information up to the cloud and being able to do AI really easily without being like extreme data science. So, business folks can make AI apps and stuff. So that's basically what my team does at Microsoft. We provide a platform for that. So we just publicly announced our product about 2 weeks ago at this point in time. So it's super exciting. So go check out our product. And the other thing is I run a company called Solve Tomorrow. And what Solve Tomorrow focuses on is helping people become natural problem solvers, kind of hence the conversation today. One fun fact about me, which is why my setup is so interesting right now, and I'm kind of using my iPad Pro and sitting in my truck. I'm currently kind of taking a year to work remote and just like live out of an Airstream. So currently I'm traveling the country and living out of my Airstream and working remote. So right now I'm currently in State Park in Alabama. So just an FYI, if you hear any like people yelling in the background, it's because I'm like sitting in my car in a state park right now. So fun fact. Okay, so let's first get into becoming a natural problem solver and why this is important and how to do it. So I kind of want to leave you with this statement here. It's natural problem solving does not come natural. I know a lot of us probably think we're really good problem solvers, and we probably actually are in certain aspects. Like maybe we're really good at ideation, or maybe we're really good at narrowing down who we're solving problems for. But a lot of us, including myself, we don't have the full package. We don't have all the pieces to becoming, just a natural problem solver and all the aspects it takes to become a natural problem solver. So it takes a lot of practice to get there. Just like if you're playing basketball and want to be a better basketball player, if you want to be a better developer, you just have to do it day in and day out. And you have opportunities every single day to solve problems. It doesn't always have to be a technology problem, right? It could be a simple problem such as fixing something in your house or your dorm or whatever, right? There's problems every single day. It just depends on how you approach them and if you want to spend the effort to solve them, right? So let's talk a little bit about how you can go about improving and becoming a better problem solver. It's with experience, right? And if this was a slide, it would be a little bit better with the animations, but basically it's pretty straightforward. You guys are definitely doing a lot of great work and class, right? Like you're going and learning a lot of different models and methods and whatever you're learning, whether it's user experience design, comp sci, web development, whatever you guys are studying in school, right? Like you guys are getting a lot of practice with those, and you have to, kind of read the literature to kind of get a grasp of it. But my approach has always been like, yes, definitely read, but also go out and spend a lot of time doing, right? Like you have to go execute on ideas, right? So the best way to problem solve is actually go solve problems, not just like kind of ideate how to solve problems. So you can start by solving your own problems. You can take part in events to promote problem solving, which all of you in this forum, I'm assuming, are doing through Hack PSU. And then, just when you're like going through life and something just doesn't add up, that's a potential opportunity to solve a problem, right? So you'll get faced with all these things on a day-to-day, and usually they're related to yourself or a human or some type of human, right? It's a human-centric most of the time. So take that in mind, and the approach I'm going to give you guys today and kind of show you, if you're not already familiar with, is the design thinking method, kind of my own spin on it. So I use this all the time to solve my problems. So I'm hoping this can also help you guys. And anybody that kind of knows me or has been to any of my seminars in the past or webinars in the past, like you guys know, I kind of preach design thinking pretty heavily. Okay, so problem solving framework. So basically 5 steps, right, in design thinking. I'll kind of break down 4 of them and then give you like another just like 1-pager of ways to think about it. But this first slide is super important. And that's understanding the problem space, right? So when you want to understand a problem, especially a human-centric problem, you have to be able to empathize. This is a skill that takes a lot of practice and a lot of thinking, right? It doesn't just come natural. Like you could maybe empathize if you've been in that situation, but a lot of times problems take diversity. They take different approaches and different like ways of thinking about a problem, which is why diverse teams are so important, because it allows you to get new perspectives on ideas and different backgrounds on ideas. But whoever your set of users are, you have to empathize with them. So if your let's just do an example. If your user set is like college students, right? You guys are college students. So I think you would be able to empathize with your peers better than I would. It would take me like some heavy user research of going and talking to college students, learning about them to really get a good grasp on who my users are, so I can kind of empathize and build that persona out for them. But there's also, college students, a very broad user set, right? Like Penn State students might not be the same as Stanford students, or Stanford students might not be the same as Ohio State students, right? Like they just, based on your location, it could be different based on the classes you take, right? So there's a lot of detail that you have to kind of iron out to be able to empathize. So it's super important in this approach. So that's always the first step. When you find your user set, start finding ways to empathize with them. The next is you need to define the problem. It's really easy to get out of scope when problem solving for a set of users. Like, you can build 1,000 features for a user set, right? And it might take you 2 years to do it, but you might build out 100 features and only one feature might be actually valuable to that user set, right? So making sure after you've empathized and really understood your user pain points, you need to be able to define the problem around that, right? That's why it's so important to start with empathy. So let me take a pause for a second, because I don't want this is a really important piece of this presentation, to see if there's any questions. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll take them. And if not, we can go ahead and. Okay, so I'm seeing a question from Ryan. What is edge? Yeah, I'll answer this actually really quick. So Ryan, what edge is? So think about like kind of the different types of computing there are today. So you have like laptops, you have, your mobile phone, you have your tablets, then you have servers that kind of sit in the data center somewhere, whether that's at your company or whether that's in a cloud like data center, meaning like Azure or AWS, like in one of the cloud data centers. Those are all different types of compute and storage, right? What edge is when I have like a device like my phone, right? Getting data and processing it right there at that location and then set it, like that's the edge, right? The edge is anything on the outside of the cloud space. and then it goes ahead and pushes data back to the cloud to do whatever like type of, you know, analysis you want to do on that data. And I can send out some examples. I know this might be a new topic for a lot of you guys, but I'll send out a few links that you guys can go reference if you want to learn about edge computing. Okay, so I don't see any questions about the problem space. So let me go ahead and move over to the next part of the problem solving framework. So the next piece is after you've empathized with your users, you've defined that problem and scoped it out. The next thing is you need to be able to generate ideas to go solve this problem. And this is actually where a lot of us are really good at, right? We're really creative individuals. We can use our backgrounds. We can use our friends, our colleagues, whoever they are, to help us generate ideas. And you can be really creative about these ideas at first, you know, just kind of throw a bunch of ideas at a whiteboard. Once you've thrown those ideas at the whiteboard, though, you got to kind of scope it back to figure out, okay, well, am I meeting the problem scope I defined in step 2? Once you've kind of picked out like what idea or what solution you're going to go approach, that's when you have to be quick to validate that solution. It shouldn't take you 2 years to go validate that single idea, right? You need to find ways to quickly go validate it. This is why design thinking is a really fast, iterative, human-centric design approach. Like it's not to go, you know, spend a ton of time, you know, making something perfect in a vacuum. It's about going and getting feedback from your users immediately and creating some type of minimal viable product or a prototype to go do this, right? So validating that solution that you just had ideated on based on what you defined and empathized previously, you want to really be able to go out and test that immediately to see if it fits that user pain point or if it doesn't. Okay, so once you've done that, like, and you've figured out your pain point for your user and you've created a solution and you've actually like started building out, you know, the next piece is just executing on it, right? Like this is kind of my tips and tricks from my experience. Like you'll hear a lot of people come up to you and say like, hey, I have this great idea. It's to, you know, it's going to be for, let's say like, I don't know, like new hires or like people who just moved to a new city. I'm building an app for people that moved to a new city, right? But you know, you go talk to this individual maybe 3 months later and they had never, you know, actually executed on that idea, right? So a lot of people have great ideas, but they really don't mean anything if you don't go execute on them. And lastly, like, don't work in a silo. Like I've learned this through my experience. It's really easy to like kind of want to, you know, dominate the problem that you're going to focus on and like really hold your values or your ideas as being, you know, the only idea or the only like solution to the problem. Don't do this. Like it's a good way to silo yourself outside of your team. I think we've, you know, a lot of us have probably experienced this in teamwork or group work or schoolwork, right? It's really important to like really make sure you don't take that individual tone to it and you kind of really understand your team or, you know, whoever you're working with to go execute on this. So this is this cheat sheet that I'm going to send to you guys afterwards. It really breaks down each one of these. You know, obviously you can go out and look at Don Norman's, all of his work. He, you know, has been doing design thinking for 30 years, right? And he's kind of the guy who inspired me to go down this path. But look at this. This is a good cheat sheet to always have on like handy to you in a PDF on your desktop or even on your phone, just to kind of always reference. Once you start kind of starting to like take problem solving approaches through these kind of steps, you'll realize you don't need this cheat sheet anymore, right? It's kind of like, you know, you'll have that just, it'll become natural to you and you'll finally become a natural problem solver. And I just want to caveat, this is just one of the very many human-centric approaches to going to solve problems. There's many of them other ones out there. This is just my favorite one. So I wanted to kind of share this with you guys today if you're not familiar with it. So with that said, let's go ahead and I'll stop sharing and put my video back on. I would love to, I know you guys can't come off mute. So I would love to hear in the chat what you guys are working on this weekend. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I would love to hopefully answer any of those.
We actually can unmute anyone. If you'd like to raise your hand in participants, I believe at the bottom there should be an option to raise your hand. We can unmute you and talk about your project, and we can maybe work.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd love for this to be interactive. And also you can ask me other questions outside of that too. I think we can use this as a Q&A, or we can use it as a way to help give any feedback on your projects. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions from the attendees. So that's all I have. If there's no additional questions, I will definitely share out the resources to the Hack PSU team to share out to you guys if you want to use them.
Tommy
you guys
just
want to connect?
raised his hand actually, so I just gave him permission to speak if he wants to talk.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, Tommy.
So did you start off using these steps when you started working?
Yes, great question. I actually started, I learned about design thinking when I was a sophomore at Penn State. I was trying to figure out like kind of what I wanted to focus on at Penn State. When I first started, my college career, I thought I was going to kind of be an engineer, like a web developer. But I really kind of realized quickly that I didn't want to just be a full-time developer. So I was trying to find a different path. And I was doing research with one of the professors as like an undergraduate researcher. And that professor had actually introduced me to kind of Don Norman's methodologies and thinkings. And that exposed me to design thinking. And that's when it kind of unlocked the power. So I started kind of just using that from then on to like just solve day-to-day problems. And then it also helped me kind of get my first startup off the ground. And I use it every single day at Microsoft. It's what a product manager, it's a great tool for a product manager. So if you, I know some people have questions about like, okay, well, if I'm trying to build like an AI like algorithm for this, this tool, right? How do I apply design thinking to this, right? Design thinking is not like a technical problem solving model, right? It's not made for that, but whatever model you are building, there's some user attached to the end of it, right? Like you're not just building out like an AI app or AI model to go solve nothing, right? It'd be a waste of time. So this can be used at any problem space where you're actually solving something for an individual or human. Hope that helped clarify, Tommy. Thanks for the question.
Another question. So you said you wanted to be a web developer, right? So how would you use these in like LeetCode?
So LeetCode, like when you're solving a problem on LeetCode, right? Like you're solving some type of problem for someone, right? Like that's how I would use it, right? Think about this as the way to identify who your user is and like really make sure you have that user narrowed down, right? The technical aspect of solving a problem, like whether that's how do you go actually build out the code base for whatever application you decide, that's not really a way to use design thinking. Design thinking is to identify who you're going to build this app for, and then what features in this app do I need to build out in order to make sure I'm hitting the pain points of my user. But yeah, good question. I see some other questions coming into the Q&A. Okay. So anonymous attendee said, how did you decide on product management? Great question. So when I was in college, I didn't even know what product manager, when I was in college, I didn't even really know the product manager role existed. So it's kind of a funny story, right? Like I was really interested in entrepreneurship. So that's why I started my first kind of like company when I was in college, because I had a problem that resonated heavily with me. I was solving my own problems, right? I felt like I didn't have a strong portfolio to go get jobs in the design space. So I wanted to kind of create a platform to allow me to go get portfolio opportunities. So that's why I created Descomp. But after that kind of startup like trickled out and we didn't like get the funding we needed to continue, and I had to go get like a real world job to kind of like help myself live on the day-to-day and pay off my student loans. I went out and got a UX design role. just to kind of like a consulting role to kind of continue to like pay the bills. And then during that process, Microsoft had reached out to me for a consulting role to ask if I wanted to be like a web development UX consultant, because that's kind of where my skill set lied at that point in time. So I ended up taking the role at Microsoft in kind of UX consulting for their kind of like service field role and new college hire role. And I really realized quickly I didn't like consulting, and I wanted to kind of own product from end to end. So one thing I learned in consulting was like, you can go in and like solve a problem really quickly, but like you're never going to get to learn how those users really utilize that product, because a lot of these contracts are like 12-month, 8-month contracts. Like you go in, you leave, and then you move on to the next company, right? But when I got to Microsoft, I met a lot of PMs in the engineering team, and I like realized like this is a really cool opportunity. It's kind of just like entrepreneurship, just like at a large enterprise, a large tech company. So when I found out about that role, I started like just talking to a ton of product managers at Amazon, Microsoft, Google, just to learn about the role, and realized it was a good fit for me. So I started pursuing a job there in PM, and ended up getting one about like 7 months after my kind of effort to learn about it. And that's how I'm here today. So that's kind of a long-winded story about how I got to be a product manager at Microsoft. Okay, Elise said, I saw you have experience as project manager for Azure. Have you gone through the entire design thinking, prototype, MVP phase with that platform? So, okay, project manager and product manager and program manager, they're all kind of different roles. So my role is kind of more of a product program manager at Microsoft. Microsoft doesn't really have product. Like I'm not going to get into these like company title details, because it's like a 50-minute conversation in itself. But like, if you look at Facebook, they might have a TPM, which is technical product manager role. They might have a product manager role. Amazon might have a product manager role. I know Google's is like associate product manager for their entry-level roles. Microsoft just has program manager. So program manager can encapsulate engineering feature work, like building out features for a product, whether it's Microsoft Word, Azure, whatever product or service you're working on, right? And then there's program manager, which means like you manage more of a holistic scope of services or a program all up, like whether that's to like grow the hardware ecosystem, right, with Azure products, right? So that'd be an example of program management. I kind of lie in between program and product on my team. So now to get to the second piece of that question, yes, I use it every single day. So, there's another, method out there called prototyping. I'll leave you guys a link to Alberto's book on prototyping and how to kind of do quick prototyping and prototyping. I know prototyping is one of his coined phrases, and we also use that methodology at Microsoft, but I'll talk about my design thinking. So I've used design thinking to build out things within the Azure Percept world on that product we just had launched. We talked to tons of users before we, went out and built our product. We wanted to empathize with whoever our user set was. And, that's the importance in product development, is like, it's really easy to go take your technical muscle and flex it and say like, I can build this really sophisticated technical product. But it's really hard to take a product and really match it to a set of users and make sure you're actually achieving their pain point. And that's when you realize like it's not always about like how strong your technical muscle is. It's actually just as important, if not more important, to make sure you're actually finding that, like, they call it product market fit, right? Okay, great question though. Let's keep going down. What skills are required for a product manager? I have AZ-103 certification, AWS SAA certification. What doors can those open? Sorry, Tommy, I'm not actually familiar with those certifications. I've never, I don't have really too many certifications under my belt. I've only got the certifications that I was told to get for my job, which aren't even relevant, to be honest, to me anymore. So I would say the best way to get product management experience is to go solve a problem of your own, or to go solve some product problem and, apply this design thinking. You can't become a good product manager if you're not solving product problems. I know that's like probably a really simple way to answer that question, but it's kind of like the truth. Like you need to be able to have a portfolio of product problem experiences that you've approached. And it doesn't mean you have to go build, like, I'll say one more thing. It doesn't mean you have to go build $1 billion company, but you have to learn from the mistakes you made, or like the user data you got, the feedback you got and iterated on. Like you have to be able to tell that story on how you got from like this idea to this MVP, and then back to this idea, and then to this next stage of the MVP. That's like what good product managers do. They keep talking to their users, and they keep iterating to make sure that to find the product fit for the pain points they're trying to solve for their end user.
There's
Okay.
also a question in chat. I don't know if you saw that earlier.
I didn't. Let me go over there. Okay, what does a PM do when they ship a brand? Okay, sorry, your question just came in. What does a PM do when they ship a brand new, never before seen feature and major tech company begins to clone it? A recent example, I guess, would be Twitter replicating Clubhouse with a Twitter space. Okay, so this is kind of a tricky question to answer. This happens probably, obviously, more frequently than you would think. Sorry, there's a dog barking in the background. This is, I mean, to be honest, like you can't do much about it, right? Like you have to keep down your product roadmap and like the strategy you put behind the product, right? And make sure like your users will tell all, right? So it's not always about being first to market, right? Like first to market, you'll get definitely a lot of PR, but when you're a big tech company, right? Like you have the power to go get PR if you want it, right? It's about making sure at the end of the day, when you ship that product you shipped is a quality product and it matches that user need, right? Because you can be the first person to like say, this is the product we're releasing, whether it's like Instagram releasing a new feature on their platform, or if it's Clubhouse, right? Whoever it is, right? The most important piece is that you took the time, you learned who your users were, you understood what the pain points were. So when that product releases, it's not like a flash in the pan, right? It's not like a bunch of PR articles and then 2 weeks later, nobody's using your feature. It's something that is going to get a user to recognize your feature and then get them to stick with the feature, right? Because it actually solves something that they deal with on their day-to-day. Okay, I think there's another question after that one. Okay, after hearing about your background and how you discovered product management, my situation is very similar. What would you recommend to a senior pursuing a career in product management? I graduated in August after my internship. Any tips and advice would be helpful. Yeah, great question. So I don't think there's any wrong time to like start your product management journey. You know, I started my company when I was in my fall semester of my senior year, right? So, you know, once again, it's like I didn't have a plan to go be a product manager. That wasn't my goal at that point in time, but like I just went out and solved a problem that was relevant to me and my friends, right? And I built a team around it. I, you know, went out and learned from my users, and we got a product out there, right? So when the time came and I actually learned about the PM role, like I was able to go tell that journey and that experience and that story to these recruiters, right? Because though I didn't like study product management or comp sci product management in college, like I had real experience solving a real pain point for users, and I had like the data to back it up, right? So I would say start with your own problems, start with family problems, just get a problem that you're interested in going to solve, and then, you know, use this design thinking method to go prototype something out and get an MVP out there. Like you can do an MVP in like 6 to 8 weeks, right? Like you can get through an accelerator, incubator, and you could do like an MVP in like 6 to 8 weeks to validate a problem. Now, I'm not going to say you're going to solve that problem in 6 to 8 weeks, but you can really like get some good feedback from a user set if you're really focused within 6 to 8 weeks. Great questions. Okay, another question. Are you one of those design thinkers that strongly believe in paper prototyping, or do you typically jump into interactive interfaces? Also, really good question. So since I have like also like a UI background, I always start, I don't start on paper. I use my iPad Pro, right? Like I use tools on my iPad Pro to do that. nowadays, but you can kind of equate it to paper. Like, you don't want to spend a ton of time with interactive designs. Like, good interactive designs take a long time to build out in Figma or Sketch, right? Like, it takes time to actually put those pieces together. So you want to make sure you understand like the design you're going to build out before you start putting it into these high fidelity tools, right? So starting on paper, starting on like note cards or whatever you want to start on to kind of put the flow and experience together, like, start quickly, get it in front of your users. Like, you can honestly bring paper in front of certain users, right? And say like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And you can like really put together this really crappy MVP to get feedback if you have a strategy in mind. So I always start with something low fidelity because, I want to make sure I'm not spending a lot of time on something that I haven't validated. And, there's a lot of great paper prototyping tools out there. I'm also going to kind of like plug a book that's I thought was really insightful. And it's not related directly to the technology world of like big tech. It's actually a book called Creative Inc. by Ed Catmull, one of the founders of Pixar. When they build those Pixar movies out, right? If you haven't read the book, I highly recommend it. But when they build those Pixar movies, right, like there's so much work that it takes to go build out that movie, right? It's like a 5-year process. But all of those artists or all of those designers, they always start on like napkins or paper, or whatever, right, is in front of them. What movie was it? I think it was Monsters, Inc., where they, the director of that movie and the writer of that movie, they were like sitting at lunch and they were just kind of like writing it down on napkins, right? So, just if you have an idea, put it on paper so you don't forget it later. And then, you can validate and build it out high fidelity at a different time once you validated it. Great question. Okay, another Q&A. As someone with a wide-ranging interest, I often find it difficult to keep my attention and motivated narrowed onto a particular skill set or field. This leaves me feeling unprepared and in most of the skill set recruiters are looking for. Do you have any tips for maintaining focus on developing a particular skill when there are numerous other things fighting for attention? Yeah, great question. I also have a short attention span. I'll blame technology for that a little bit. I actually deleted all social besides LinkedIn because it was killing my attention span. So this is like where you kind of get like those corny responses where you need to like find your passion in order to keep motivated. It's going to be a struggle, right? Like, I would say, it is important to go build out skill sets, like whether you want to build out like a developer skill set, a design skill set, or a problem solving skill set, right? Like, it's important to build those out. Sometimes you got to kind of fight through, your attention span, and like kind of like when you don't want to do something, you have to do it anyways to kind of keep you on that path. I don't have any great tips or tricks for that. It's just, you got to kind of like grind through it, to be honest. Like, it's really easy to be excited about something for 2 to 3 weeks. And then, sometimes other priorities come in front of you, or like more interesting things maybe come in front of you that are like only interesting for a day. And they take your attention off of that thing that you were really focused on 3 weeks ago. At that point in time, you need to decide what you want to do and why you're doing it, right? So you got to kind of have a longer term vision. And once you have that longer term vision, you have to like fight through the days you don't want to work on it, right? So you can achieve your vision. So, Steve Jobs used this like kind of analogy where, a lot of people are trying to navigate through cities using maps or GPS, right? And they're kind of at that like street level view, right? The people that really are strategic about life or problem solving or making an impact, they're actually at the top of the towers, right? The skyscrapers, looking over and seeing like how to navigate the entire landscape of the city compared to just right turns and left turns or going straighter within those like confines of your GPS. So you got to grind through it. You got to have a strategy and a vision. Okay, great question. So I think we have 4 minutes left. Any other last minute questions or comments from the group? Okay, not seeing any. So first off, I just want to thank Hack PSU for having me again. This was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking to college students, and if you want to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, tell me what you're working on. I'd love to hear that. And if not, then it was a pleasure meeting and chatting with all of you guys. And good luck this weekend finalizing your Hack PSU products. Thanks, everyone. Yes, Tommy, I'll share out that slide too. So I'll send that to Catherine, and she can share it out with this cohort here. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a good afternoon.